If you're like me, I think most of us sitting here in the last two weeks is probably going to see Avengers Endgame. And it's a great movie, not a sad ending. Joking, it's a very sad ending. Sorry for those of you who haven't watched it. But I'm not going to give too much away. I'm going to use a quote, but just a bit of the atmosphere of the thing is when you go and watch it, I was a bit surprised. I didn't know people clap in a cinema. That is this next level cringe. I was just within myself, and then they were like cheering when the bad guy couldn't do a decision. And then my girlfriend next to me started clapping, and I was like, no, just caught her hand and said, stop it, please, this is embarrassing. And there were people like booing Thanos and everything like that. But anyway, upon the whole Endgame thing, in one of the biggest moments, now I'm not going to give away who said it for those of you who haven't watched it, but in one of the biggest moments in the movie, well, it wasn't the biggest, but it was a very big moment in the movie, I think the best line came from this moment. And the character says, he looks to Tony and he says, I don't want to get the slide wrong. Can we just get the first slide up? Tonight, I'm speaking on the bigger picture. That's going to thread through the theme of everything. But can we just go to the next slide, please, Ashley? And this is the line that the character says to Tony, and he says, the greater good, talking about himself, the greater good has really outweighed my own self-interest. And in that moment, I just paused in the cinema, and I got really real with myself. I was like, yo. And I paused and I thought of my calling and God's calling on my life and His calling for this world. And I had to be real, and I had to say, God, has my self-interest outweighed your kingdom? Has it outweighed your call, in my life and stuff? And I want to challenge is that whatever you may be doing, whatever God's call is on your life, whatever you're sitting here for, whatever you go to university, you work, you lead an organization, whatever the position you may hold, whatever it may be, I want you to be real with yourself and acknowledge that the temptation for self-interest is always lurking around the corner for every single one of us. And I want to say, especially if you're the one mandated or chosen to do the work of God, your character and your heart has to be so pure, because the goal for you is to get the harvest done and not your self-interest. And if you're caught up in that quote, and if you've been charged with the work of the kingdom, or with the work of anything for a boss or whatever it may be, if your heart's caught up in that thing right there, if your heart's caught there, what tends to happen is the greater good gets outweighed, and you can't complete the task God's got for you, but you try to complete the task that gives you the most satisfaction. Okay, that's the theme I want to thread through tonight. And this is what I want to touch on is, are you asking the questions, what's in it for me? What can I get out of it? Because God is wanting to use a willing heart for His kingdom. Okay, so this is the theme for tonight, is the greater good must always outweigh our self-interest. And what I'd like to focus on is the worker and not the harvest. Because Jesus said this here. He said, the harvest is full, but the workers are few. So where's the problem? With the harvest or with the workers? The problem has always been with the workers. God's heart is for the disciples to win the many. So who does God go after? The workers or the harvest? He goes after the workers. So where's the problem always been? It's always been with the workers. Now, so the harvest must mean more to you than the self-interest that come with it, okay? Now, what does God say about this? Now, what does God say on this topic of self-interest on a task and on His plan to get the harvest over your plan to grow as a worker? Now, I want to read a verse from Matthew 20, verse 1 to 16. And I'm just going to paraphrase the first half, but the second half I'm going to read. There's the second half over there. Don't read it just yet. Listen to me. But basically, it's the parable of the vineyard workers. Okay. So how it goes is there's this farmer. He has a vineyard, and he needs the work to get done because the harvest is getting full. There's some grapes to be picked and stuff. So what he does at 6 a.m., he goes out in the marketplace where all the workers would be, and he says to them, he's like, I need obviously the best because the best get hired first. I need some workers. So at 6, some get hired and go and work. Then there's still more harvest, there's still more work to be done, so the farmer goes back. At 9 o'clock, he gets more in. Then he does the same at 12. Then he does the same at 3. Then he does the same at 5. And then at the end of the day, everyone goes and collects their wage. And what happens? If anyone knows the story, this is what happens, is that the people who were hired at 5 o'clock only worked for 1 hour, and they were the less skilled of the workers because they got chosen last. But the people who'd been working since 6 a.m., they worked for 12 hours, and all of them got paid the same. Every single one got paid the same. And I want to take it from here and read. Can you just go to the next slide? I want to take it from here. It says, verse 12, these who were hired last worked only 1 hour. This is the guys grumbling who were hired first. They're grumbling, they're saying, these who were hired last worked only 1 hour. They said, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the work and the heat of the day. So this is what the farmer says back. He answered one of them, I'm not being unfair to you, friend. See, he addresses him as a friend. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same as I gave you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I am generous? So the last will be first, and the first will be last. And I want to just pause for a moment on that line. Are you envious because I'm generous? Now, just to give a bit of context to this verse here, Jesus is actually responding to a question from Peter. Jesus had just told all of them, he says, if you want to follow me, if you want to be my disciple, if you want to enter the kingdom, sell all your possessions and come follow me. So Peter runs up to Jesus and he says, I've got rid of everything. What's in it for me? He says, what will there be for us who've given up everything? Peter's heart is in the wrong place. He's looking for what's in it for him. And Jesus says, the kingdom of heaven is like this. And how does he end it? So the last will be first and the first will be last. So Jesus is actually addressing a deeper issue. He recognized that Peter's affirmation came within the call and not outside of the call. And so whenever Jesus starts a parable by saying the kingdom of heaven is like this, he's actually addressing the perfect behavior that he wants one of his disciples to have. He wants your hearts to be postured in such a way that you live kingdom lifestyle. Okay? So what was the deeper issue for Peter is that the affirmation came from within the call. Okay? A sign that you're following the kingdom of heaven and the ways of God is that your affirmation comes outside of what you do. But with a willing heart, you just go after things, not wanting any recognition for any of that stuff. So I want to now unpack this scripture, okay? And I want to encourage us to get involved in things where the bigger picture outweighs your self-interest. I want you guys to get involved in things where you don't get recognition. Get involved in things that don't feed your recognition, because if you feed your recognition, what you're actually doing is you're just giving Satan a platform to set your identity in that recognition. Okay, that's just the cycle you're going around. And the whole time I unpack this, please just have the following statement in mind. Are you envious? Okay, because I am generous. So, from this passage, we get a crystal clear image of the vineyards, of the owner, the farmer's desire. This is his desire. It's crystal clear. His desire is for the harvest to be taken in, all the grapes to be picked. Okay? And he cares very little for what worker he hires, how skilled you are, or how unskilled you are. He doesn't care much for that. What he cares for is his harvest to grow. And that's why he goes out and he hires again. And note this, is that he keeps hiring, and he hires the more unskilled and more unskilled, okay? He doesn't care about the hours you've worked or the quality you have. He just goes after you, and because he wants to pull you in so that the lost may be saved. That's the heart of the Father. And in this verse, he goes out till 5 o'clock. And the people are standing around at 5, okay, who haven't been hired. They are like, I don't want to give a comparison and say something silly, but they are the unwanted, the people who are not worth employing. He goes and he hires them. Why? Because he needs to carry on getting people in order for the harvest to be taken in. That's the big picture. The big picture is not to pay people accordingly or to give credit where credit's due. The picture is for the harvest to be taken in, for people to be saved. Okay? So, I want to just look at the heart of the workers quickly. So, there are 4 points I could just take out for the heart of the workers. Firstly, they were blinded by their self-interest. Often when you just you're just into your selfishness, what happens is you've got no big picture mindset. You're just absolutely blind to the task in front of you because you're wanting credit. Can we go to the next point? The next one is you have a lack of compassion for your fellow workers. Now, how many of us know it's called that cutthroat mentality? I'll do anything. I'll stop at nothing. I'll do anything to get to the top. In some of your cases at school, it might be not caring much about those friends around you, but doing anything to maybe be head boy, head girl, or gain a position. It might be at work where you do anything to get above your employees so you can get closer to that managerial position. So they had the same heart as that kind of cutthroat mentality. Can we go to the next point? This is an interesting one, and I want to hold on it for a while. The worth of the worker is actually, I'm going to come back to it later. The worth of the worker is measured, spelling mistake, sorry guys, is measured by comparing it with the accomplishment of others. That was the third characteristic of the worker. And then let's go to the last one quickly. It says, they despise those who came later. Just be real with yourself quickly. Do you despise those who you think are unworthy for the gift that they get? Do you despise those who enter the race a lot longer, where you've walked longer, you've worked harder, you spend more hours, be it in quiet times or in effort, and all of a sudden someone comes in and gains a favor that you think you've earned? Okay? Are you jealous because he is generous? Do you have envy because he is generous? Okay. If that's you, check your heart. There's obviously like a selfish, and I'm speaking to myself, there's a selfishness hidden deep within us that's hard to avoid, that's hard to see sometimes. So, what I want to say if you guys identify with any of these, is that the end goal is the harvest and not your wage. Okay? It's not the credit for working the longest hours. God's not looking for you to prove yourself. God's looking for people who've got nothing to prove but everything to give. Okay? With willingness, with no desire for any ulterior motive. Okay? And when you have that attitude, when that attitude is right, okay, that line, are you jealous because I am generous, no longer gets to you. Okay? Because you've crossed over from the mindset. You know where you've crossed over from? You've crossed over from anxiety to peace. Okay? You've crossed over from what's in it for me to what's in it for God. And anxiety is one thing that's coming up more and more. It's like a pattern in youngsters I'm seeing these days, is that we're being so filled and so overwhelmed by this anxiousness that we wake up with, be it social anxiety, be it work anxiety, anything. But the problem with anxiety, well, the solution to anxiety is being self-aware that it comes from a selfishness. Spend enough time with God, guys, and you just get so self-aware about what's going on. Anyway, I digress there a bit. So, yeah, anxiety. Oh, yeah. So, what was it? Are you envious because I'm generous? Doesn't get to you because you moved over from anxiety to peace. Now, this is the definition of anxiety I heard once, and this is gonna. I hope if you're gonna take any note, take this down, because this shocked me. It just broke me. It says anxiety is the mark of a falling idol. Okay, I want you to just look at where you got some idols in your life, and where those idols are falling. That's sometimes where the anxiety comes in. And I've been reading this book called Homo Deus, and one of the statements they make is they say that depression is killing more people than wars around the world. You are more likely to die from depression and suicide today than from a war hitting your country. Okay? And you know what precedes a lot of depression? Is anxiety that's not dealt with. So I'd encourage you, if you see there's some idols, just let them fall. And I want to just show you, I've got about 11 or 12, I think it's 12, subtle signs that you might be motivated with selfish ambition. And I'm going to read them. Okay. First one is this. If you identify with any of these, just circle it in your mind, take it down or anything, or something, take a photo. These are the subtle signs that you're motivated by selfishness. Firstly, your personal sense of self-worth goes up and down with opportunities ahead of you. You fear failure. Failure is terrifying. You think you're the deal. Any of us can testify to that. Was it just me? Okay. You use people to get you where you want to go. You take the credit. You get offended when others get the credit. Next, you strive for breadth of exposure. You're always looking to be chosen. You're always looking to be seen. You're looking for that recognition. Can we go to the next one? You're always thinking about the next big thing. You continuously compare yourself to others. It's hard to say no. That's an interesting one. Who are your battles to say no to some opportunities? Okay, that's actually a subtle sign of selfishness within you. You feel entitled to any success that comes your way, and the need to win is greater than the need to love. Lastly, you're always insecure. And to that I want to say, guys, it's easy to surrender the idol. You know why? It doesn't matter how hard you work or how long you work for that stuff. Your pay is going to be exactly the same, okay, as the one who worked just an hour, okay, but understood their position. This guy, this owner, needs the harvest to be done, so he called me to do the work, okay? That's the last hour worker. So when you start seeing that anxiety rise up in you, just know your efforts is not going to place you up or down, okay? It's God's call that places you. Now, what do we do? What can we do? Can we go to the next slide? Okay, what to do? Keep the harvest in focus, okay, not your wages. Happy people see the bigger picture. People who are genuinely happy often see God's bigger picture. I just want to read a scripture from Philippians 1 verse 12, and I just want to just picture this quickly. Can we go to it's right there. Now, I want you to know, brothers and sisters. Now, Paul's writing this from jail, okay, in prison. He was chained. He's saying, now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. He had the big picture in mind, Paul. He had a much bigger picture. He didn't care much about the shackles. He cared about God's kingdom advancing. Now, who actually won this battle? The soldiers that chained him, or the fact that he got to write the letters that ended up in the Bible? Okay, what meant more? The fact that Paul couldn't preach, or the fact that he could write the letters that every single one of us here have been transformed by? Okay, Paul had the bigger picture. He's like, oh my word, I'm in chains here. I'm up against the wall. Like, it's up against me, but I've got an opportunity here. And I don't even think Paul himself knew at that stage what the effect that obedience to God would have in the lowest moment of his life. So happy people always have a larger perspective. They see the big picture. And when you don't see the big picture, these things happen to you. You become unhappy, you become highly frustrated, and very discouraged. And discouragement is a clear sign. You know, discouragement is a clear sign of self-centeredness. Okay? Yes, you are going. But if you continually just discouraged and frustrated, just check your heart. Check the idols in your life. Okay? Just keep an eye on that. And with us, the bigger picture is not your wage, but it's the harvest for God's glory. And we live in a day and age where we're so self-centered. The world is so self-centered. And you wouldn't even be judged today for just having the most conceited of mindsets. Because that's just what's fed through society, through Netflix, through television, through social media, is that you're afforded the opportunity to be a hero in your own lunch break. You're afforded the opportunity to sit on the throne of your Facebook or Instagram account. You're afforded that. So you won't even be judged, harshly by the world. But I want to say this. Remove the self-centeredness and have a bigger picture. Point number 2 is don't let your attitude block God's work through you. Okay. Look what the workers said. This is the verse 11 just before I quoted. Just before, when they addressed the master about being treated unfairly, this is what they said. When they received the 1 denarius, they began to grumble against themselves. Can we see there's an attitude of the mind here that's happening? Okay, it's a mindset that's actually going on. Is you need to control your mind. That's what's happening here. Their minds went awry, and then they began to grumble. Now, begin with your thoughts. Don't let your attitude block God's work through you. The way to deal with that is you need to begin with your thoughts. We really need to be people who we put such a concentrated effort on our thought life and in that pattern. And I want to read a verse, 2 Corinthians 10, verse 45. Can we just go to the next slide, please, Ashley? No, that's not it. I'm just going to read it out aloud. No, don't worry, you can go back. There we go. You can leave it there. So it says, the weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. And we demolish every stronghold and pretension and argument that sets itself up against the will of God. And the last verse of that says, we take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. So how do you reverse the whole thing of self-centeredness? You capture the thought and your tongue and make it obedient to God. Out of the overflow of the heart, I think it could even be a mind thing, a thought thing. Out of the overflow of your heart, the mouth speaks. Okay? Bad stuff comes out of your mouth because your thought life's not in check. Okay? But you know how to reverse that. You start confessing good things and your thought life starts to change. But you do have to watch your thought life so that the bad stuff doesn't come out. Okay? It's very easy to see, actually, restless people. It's easy to see restless people who follow their own ambitions. It's easy to see the tricks they try, how they endlessly tire themselves out trying to obtain the objects of their own ambition. They're just going for it and going for it and going for it. And the remedy to that, this is the remedy to that entire thing of just being tired and being full of anxiety. It's don't even think, don't even desire, don't even dream, or don't even long for any prosperity that doesn't have God's blessing. Okay? There's a lot of things to look good for. I'm not saying don't be passionate. I'm not saying don't go after things. What I am saying, don't go after the prosperity of that thing if God's blessing is not behind it. Okay? Then my last point on application is the heart of the actual message, and that's to value generosity and not envy. So this is the quote that just wrecked them. This is the quote that just cut all those workers, and I hope it's just cutting you tonight. And it's this here, is, are you envious because I am generous? And the Father says that to you. Do you value generosity or do you value envy? Where's your heart sitting? Where is it at? And this is the point I think the Father wants to teach us tonight. And the parable is actually not about unfair payments. The parable is not so much, at the conclusion of the whole thing, it didn't matter much that they got paid the same. It wasn't the fact that the workers felt they got cheated. Okay? It actually had nothing to do with the generosity or the extravagance that made them fully angry. This is what it was. The issue is this. By dealing generously with the other unskilled workers, okay, the landowner was making a declaration about the value of the guys, okay, who started at 6. The landowner made a declaration about who they are and their value. This is a parable about self-value. You know what the workers who worked from 6 got robbed of? Their claim to superiority and to privilege. It got taken from them. And that's the heart Jesus wants to just capture in you. Is what do you value? Do you value his generosity that all might be saved? Remember, this is a parable also just attacking Jews, who at the time were God's chosen people for years and years and years. The Jews are the guys who've been there from 6 a.m., working in the vineyards. They've been going for it. And at 5 p.m., Jesus rocks up and says, you know what? I actually want the Gentiles in. Paul, can you just go and preach? The Romans are building a road to Damascus, and you just go and just set alight everything so that all may be saved. And what happens? Hardness of heart happens. Okay, in all those. And the Jews have a pattern. The history of God and his people is this pattern, is that you harden your heart against him when you see the generosity he has in all people. And the Bible says in Hebrews, do not harden your heart like they did in the fall. And this is, I'm urging you from this parable, when you see others doing well, support it, get under it, push it. Okay, when you see people going further than you, find out ways you can push them further than you. Okay, get involved in things where you can just do something that doesn't give you any recognition, doesn't give you any credit. Get involved in those things, okay? And get your sense of self-worth in the quiet place. Like, if there's one thing to get right in your life, and this is the best thing Jesus did, is while it was still dark, he woke up, went to a solitary place, and there he met with God. I've said it a lot when I preach, but one of Jesus' greatest success, other than dying and being raised again, was the fact that he could meet with God constantly in a quiet place where no one saw him. No one saw him. And in that quiet place, God will build you. You know, in Christian circles, we say you need to grow in character, or as you get closer to God, you're going to grow in character. As you come to the church and come to the community, your character is going to grow and stuff. But what does it actually mean, you growing in character? What is the essence of that whole thing? We think we're going to become good people and stuff. But I tell you what it is that actually, as you get closer to God, there's a breaking down of your self-worth that you thought you had. And over time, God slowly pieces you back together. And he builds a character that has an identity in him. Okay? And your self-worth comes from him. But you have to let yourself go. And you have to let yourself almost be like broken down by him. But the encouraging thing, and it's not the discouraging thing that you're broken down. The encouraging thing is that you're built up and you're made like him. And you don't seek the approval of people anymore. So, in your pursuit of what God has called you to, you'll always, so on the back of what I've just said, letting God affirm you, God approve you. If you don't have that right, these 4 things, okay, are the big idols that we all challenge with. Ashley, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay. I want you to recognize with all 4 of them. Okay. In your call, in your walk with God, you will come across and be confronted face to face with this. All of us we have one of these 4 issues, okay? You're either an approval addict, okay? You're either a comfort addict, you're either a control freak, or you're power hungry. Okay? Every one of those, and this will resonate very strong with all of you. But can we just go to the next quote? This is from Tim Keller. This is what he addresses to these idols that all of us have. He says, the greatest nightmare of the approval addict is rejection. Of the power addict, humiliation. Of the comfort addict, suffering. And of the control addict, uncertainty. Those workers who've been there from 6 felt rejected, okay? They got paid the same, so that they lost their comfort. There was like a suffering, okay? Those are the idols they got. And I want to say to you, if you identify with any of these, you have a nice quote, a nice picture right there that you can go straight to the root, okay? If you hate discomfort, if you hate suffering or just not having a meal, or you want the best pillow or best blanket or something, then maybe you've got a comfort idol. If you hate rejection, if you really can't deal with rejection, you've got an approval problem. Your identity and your whole affirmation of life is in the approval of others. Okay? So, now, I want to say what we can all, as a community, get right. Okay? Can we go to the next slide, please, Ashley? Get involved in something where the end goal is bigger than you. Okay, a lot of us are alive today, and if we're really honest with ourselves, our end goal is ourselves. We want to have a nice house, beautiful family, beautiful wife, cars, kids running everywhere, good education, really live happy in this life. If we're honest, we go to work to just tick all those boxes. We work really hard, even those of us who think we're giving back to society and we're just giving of ourselves. A lot of the time, we do that so we can feel good about ourselves, so that when we're at home, we can be better husbands, we can be better wives. Even the act of a good deed has a selfish motive of making you feel that you're adding value. But I want to really urge you, is just get wholly invested in something where you've got nothing to take out of it, but everything to give. Now, twice a week, I've got a company called Future Lab Education, and we teach robotics and a bunch of maths and some other things. And twice a week, there's actually a few of us sitting here who have been there a few times with me. A couple of us actually go consistently Monday and Wednesday. But what we do is we go in, and with no satisfaction on ourselves and a full cost to ourselves, with very little pay, just like the workers were complaining about, we go and we give and we give and we give. Now what that cultivates inside us is a sense of giving to something where I can't see any reward. Now, another thing about going and giving of myself and giving of whoever comes with, those of you who do, another thing about going there is that the fruit of the labor being put in is only ever going to be seen in 20 years' time when those kids are out of school and have got jobs. We will never know the efforts that we're putting in, or the results of the efforts we're putting in. And just like Abraham, he received things from a long way off. He never received the things promised, Can you live with a mindset where you can go after something even though you're never going to see it accomplished in your lifetime? Can you have that attitude? Can you have that mindset? That's the challenge I want to put to you. And I want to end with this. Sean, can you and the team just go up? Can we just sing that Raise a Hallelujah? I want to get back to the heart of hope. When you do things out of selfish ambition and vain conceit, what tends to happen, when you don't get it, you lose hope. You often lose hope. You'll often only lose hope in areas where self was the end goal. But I want to push for hope to be restored. And where hope is often restored is here, is when you get fully invested in something that's just bigger than you. Yes, there's discouragement along the way, but it's easier to take the discouragement and the frustration when it's not on you. It really isn't on you. And a newsflash for all of us, there are other people along the way doing the exact same journey, working as hard. And what are you doing to get behind people and push them up and elevate them beyond yourself? That's the question. I want to end with this scripture, Philippians 2, verse 1-4. And it says this. It says, therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from His love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of the mind. Then this here, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interests of the others. Do we see what the writer is trying to tell us here? He's really encouraging and he's just saying, do it. Go out there and start doing. But don't do it out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Just get out there and just say, God, here I am. Here I am. Speak to me and be obedient to what He says. The hardest thing about the Christian walk is being obedient to that voice in the moment. God says, God just drops it in you. Pray for the person next to you in the shopping line, wherever it may be. And it's so hard to be obedient in that moment because you're going to look embarrassed. But don't do it out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Do it out of the overflow. And you will never have the overflow if you're not spending the hours in the quiet.